It's now time for The Sit Down with Don Tony.
The Sit Down, where Don Tony talks one-on-one with his followers.
What are you looking at?
About the world of pro wrestling, pop culture, and so much more.
The Sit Down with Don Tony.
And now, your host, Don Tony.
All right. September 21st, 2025. Sunday night. What's up, everybody? Don Tony here. Welcome to the Sit Down. Hope everyone is having a good weekend. It's just about over, but not too bad in the homestead. You know, a little chillier weather. We're getting into October already. And, wrestling-wise, pretty interesting last couple of days. And it's going to continue into next week. Obviously, we had the doubleheader last night, AEW All Out and WWE Wrestlepalooza. I have watched Wrestlepalooza. I saw it live. I'm kind of like questioning my decision to spend $29.99 on this ESPN service, because I decided after Wrestlepalooza was over to browse the ESPN, channels, and I find nothing else really noteworthy. I was watching Michael Jordan when he was in the minor leagues back in 1994, because I remember when it happened, and I have a couple of those minor league games, but I wanted to see the documentary. Other than that, what it comes down to is, we're now paying $30 for monthly premium live events, because nothing, quite frankly, interests me much on ESPN's platform. So I have to either get into Disney, or I got to find reasons to watch Hulu. Otherwise, I think I'm going the bootleg route once again. Listen, can I figure out a way to spend $30? Of course. But I could spend that $30 in a lot more enjoyable ways. I did not see All Out as of yet. Should I watch it? If I watch it, then I got to do a review of it, because obviously you guys want me to talk about it. Listen, we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about Wrestlepalooza, my thoughts on ESPN's first event, where we go from here in a couple of ways with WWE, and, TNA, NXT. A lot of people caught on to something that I said on the news update on Wednesday that no one else is saying. Could Joe Hendry end up being some type of a mole, to screw NXT at the end of the day? I don't see it, because Joe Hendry is so good as a babyface right now. But a lot of you seem to latch on to that like, that would be something pretty fascinating, because, look, is it going to feel like 2001 again? No. Even though this is truly an outside organization, because WWE does not own it yet if they decide to buy it. But I don't know. I'm kind of fascinated to see how this plays out on television. Because, see, what a lot of people may forget is we kind of had this during COVID. AEW was showing up on Impact Television. Remember Tony Khan with his goofy shades and Tony Schiavone with him? And we saw Kenny Omega win the championship, have it for a little bit. Christian would win it afterwards. AEW star, not Impact Wrestling's roster, so to speak. And at the time, it felt so one-sided. That's why I almost felt like what's going on now was a little bit of a knock at how AEW handled business with Impact Wrestling back in COVID. I think that's more of Impact Wrestling's fault, not AEW's fault. But I'm kind of intrigued to see where this goes on Tuesday. I will say this, and I think TNA is very aware of this. If they don't invade NXT Tuesday night And if they don't disrupt that match between Obafemi and Trick Williams, and if they do not show up in droves, this is going to be a massive disappointment. It's going to make Impact Wrestling TNA once again look like goofs. They look like goofs when AEW was in bed with them for a little bit. They're going to look like goofs again. Couple of things right off the bat with last night with Wrestlepalooza. Stephanie McMahon, first inductee into the 2026 Hall of Fame. My thoughts on Stephanie McMahon coming in, and I saw this super chat come in a little while before we went live, and I definitely want to bring it up now because I'm going to make a prediction. Police Squad asks, do you think Vince McMahon will attend next year's WWE Hall of Fame for Stephanie? And do I think Undertaker inducts her? I'll answer the second question first. I think Triple H will probably induct her. If Triple H didn't, I think Undertaker would be a great choice. Some people think Steve Austin would be a decent choice. I think at the end of the day, it's Triple H. It's keeping it in-house, like Rock inducted, Miss Maivia back not too long ago. I could see it keeping in the family. Now, as far as Vince McMahon, yes. Barring some additional revelation, I think Vince McMahon will be at the Hall of Fame next year. Brock Lesnar was a big test. Put aside, why did Brock show up and destroy Cena? There's no angle. Brock destroyed Cody. There's no angle. I get it. And I'm not knocking those individuals, but right now, I think the bigger part of it is the crowd reaction to Brock Lesnar's return. I mean, if you go online, you got the people in Janelle Grant's camp that are irate beyond belief. Yet, none of them had the balls to confront Titus O'Neil, Ron Killings, Sheamus, and everybody else that went to Vince McMahon's 80th birthday party. How could you go to a birthday party of a predator? Yeah, selective outrage. Do we call it selective outrage, or we just call them pussies? Do we just call them pussies? You don't have the balls to confront the people that you like? It's funny because, and I'm not trying to compare Vince McMahon with Charlie Kirk. We're not going politics. I refuse to drag that shit into these shows. But I will make the point how, people were like, well, if you agree with his views, I have a problem with you, and blah, 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 blah. But yet you're silent towards everybody that went to Vince's birthday party. The same people that are outraged. And what's more intimate for us wrestling fans, Charlie Kirk or Vince McMahon? I would think Vince McMahon. So Brock Lesnar returning was a huge test, and seeing the reaction, and it's non-existent. I've said this for a year and a half, ever since those allegations came out. If Brock Lesnar was guilty of anything, he was guilty of being a bad husband. That's it. And as we go further from this case, and the more of a likely chance that it ends in arbitration, and Janelle Grant probably will get some money. I think this original agreement plus a little bit of extra cash will end up being the outcome of this. And then when it ends up solving that way, then you'll have remember this, you'll have Janelle Grant's lawyer say, this was never about money. This was about all of the victims and all of the people that Vince McMahon has trafficked and abused over the years that didn't have a voice. And finally, that's what'll happen. Remember, I remember, because I do the history show every week. It was this week, a couple of years ago, that Janelle Grant's lawyer said a lot of victims of Vince McMahon are calling us. A lot of victims that want to speak out are calling us. Have you seen any of them speak out? Have you seen any of them pop up on that bitch Banfield? No. It's very easy to yep. And I'm not pro Vince with this. I think Vince is disgusting. But as we get further and further away of this, and Vince's health is deteriorating. He had the spinal surgery. He's, can't work out like he used to. He's getting smaller and smaller. He's got a Pepe Le Pew fucking haircut now with that white. I mean, it's almost like Don King. He just can't have the pimpin' afro like Don King used to have. I think Vince McMahon will be at next year's Hall of Fame. When you saw that ESPN intro yesterday to Wrestlepalooza, Vince got cheered. There's cell phone footage. When they showed Vince, and WWE is very slick because whenever they show Vince, they usually show him when he looks like he's 30. So he doesn't look like the 80-year-old pervert that we know of today. So I think Vince McMahon will be at the Hall of Fame. No, I don't think he'll be back, period. But I think he will appear at the Hall of Fame. I don't think he'll be announced. I'm sure Stephanie will acknowledge him. And I think the fans will cheer him. Again, his behavior is disgusting. That world is a world that you and I will never be a part of, thank God. We will never truly understand, thank God. But for a fact, there's Lifetime movies, there's fucking cable channels that have been doing movies like this for decades and decades and decades. You have all these billionaires and trillionaires. It reminds me of one of those Lifetime meets BET movies. You have a big party at a mansion, and there's all billionaires, and there's a bunch of hot women. Oh, if I could get into that. You look at Anna Nicole Smith, and you look at a bunch of others. Yeah, there are women that will go that route. They don't deserve to be abused criminally. But there is something called played. It comes with the territory. It's just that some people, when they get played, then they emotionally lose it. And then suddenly being played turns into criminality. I think that's one of the reasons why P. Diddy got off on some of the charges that he got. Because it's very hard to see, with all due respect, to see this woman talking the way she did and how she freaking, and you just take that woman and just replace her with Janelle Grant and you say to yourself, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. It's just, don't hate the player, hate the game. Is that what Booker T used to say? So I think Vince will be at the Hall of Fame next year. I really do. Unless something breaks or unless he passes. He's already been cleared of criminal charges. So yeah, I don't see anything holding him back this time. I don't expect him to talk, but I expect him to be there. Now, as far as Stephanie going in, them announcing this early makes sense. The first ESPN. You got to do something huge for the first pay-per-view premium live event on ESPN. Make that announcement. That's why it was done. If this was ESPN's second or third premium live event, probably would not have been announced until early next year. That's why they did it. They made it feel that this was big enough that you announce it on ESPN. Plus, you got to remember something. This is not hard to figure out. I almost feel when the scholars out there are like, why did they announce it so early? You go on the fucking ESPN app and staring right at you on the face is fucking Stephanie's Places. Her podcast is on the ESPN app. She's all over the ESPN. WWE's all over ESPN's app now. So this is why they announced it during the ESPN Premium Live event. So, of course she is worthy of going in. She's absolutely worthy in going in. And it's not really what she's done on camera. It's a lot of stuff that she's done off camera. And, one thing I think we all truly admit is that putting this, the controversies in front of you, Stephanie's name is not mentioned much ever. Stephanie is not really someone that, conformed to it. She might have looked the other way, And she made sure that she wasn't in the same vicinity when shit was going down. So you can never like attach her to certain situations. You could try. You could even say, Stephanie, if it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck and it tastes like a duck, it must be a duck, right? But still, there's no proof. Plus, you know, you look at the business world and how they view Stephanie McMahon, a woman of power. You know, she's won awards outside of wrestling. So this is a logical thing to do. I agree that Vince probably should be in before her. Yes, you could have the whole McMahon family go in next year. Why not? Put Shane in, put Vince in, put the McMahon family in. Just do it all in one shot. Get them all done in one shot. But Stephanie deserves to have that spotlight to herself amongst the McMahons. No, I don't think that she's going to be the centerpiece. It's possible she could be the last person speaking. But by the way, not only am I the godfather and the podfather, I'm the dog father. I don't think she'll be the centerpiece of it. We have to see who else goes into the WWE Hall of Fame. Do I think that Linda McMahon will be there? Yeah. You know, the relationship with Linda and Vince has been broken for longer than you realize. And they've been seen in public together after a lot of bullshit that has gone down. This is a marriage due to, you know, the net worth, obviously, and the power, and, you know, avoiding that controversy of a messy divorce. You know, you ask yourself, why is Linda still married to this guy? You know, the funny thing is, we never hear Linda dating. You never hear Linda outside trying to get a little bit. I think the closest we ever seen her like get some action outside of Vince is Eric Bischoff. You know, and that was a storyline. So Stephanie deserves to go in. I don't have any complaints with it. They announced it in ESPN's first event. Fine. Before I get into your questions, very, very quick thoughts about Wrestlepalooza yesterday. I think I'll do more of a review on Monday night. We'll see how Raw goes down. We'll see how much news we got to get into. My overall thoughts on Wrestlepalooza, disappointing. I expected more. Pat McAfee returning was not a surprise because we talked about that, I think, last week, that he was returning. And it was pretty obvious with ESPN, and it's the first event, Pat McAfee would be there. Personally, two matches stood out for me. Stephanie Vaquer and Io Sky, to me, was my favorite match of the night. And the mixed tag with CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins was my second favorite. Quick thoughts about all the matches. First of all, I almost want to pick up a folding chair that I have inside when I have company over. And I always want to try to replicate how Jey Uso did that. How the fuck did Jey Uso pick up the chair and literally crack his own head open? I mean, I could see if he threw it against the rope and it just bounced back and hit him. I could see if, you know, he swung it and just, he literally lifted it up to fucking hit somebody in the back and clipped his own fucking head. It was almost hilarious. It was almost hilarious. Like, I saw it and I rewound it. Thank God, ESPN. Thank you for allowing us to replay and rewind this shit. Because I rewound that shit enough times that the match was over. By the time, you know, I finished like looking closely, he fucked himself up, man. He fucked himself up. The mixed tag, I mean, the regular tag, Usos versus Braun and Braun. I don't think there was any surprise there of Braun and Braun winning. LA Knight, you know, being the referee, it was fun, but it felt more of like a Saturday night's main event match more than anything else. They worked hard. And I hope Braun Breaker didn't get injured, because that spot through the table Looked very awkward the way he landed. I hope he's okay. I haven't heard anything about injury, so we hope that he's okay. But that match, again, I don't know where this leads with LA Knight. You know what I feel like is going to happen? I feel like on Monday we're going to get some forced bullshit with LA Knight and Jey Uso a little bit more, forcing that narrative, and probably build to a match, either in Saturday night's main event or even Crown Jewel, which I hope they don't do. It just feels forced. And suddenly Jimmy Uso is like the peacemaker of everybody. Even that's flawed because Jimmy's bringing up negative traits about Roman Reigns. Shh, we're not supposed to remember that Roman anymore. Roman's a good guy now. Roman's the tribal chief. He's Street Fighter. No, shh. Jay, you remind me of Roman. The mixed tag match. It was fun. It's pretty obvious that the disdain that people want to convince themselves to be apparent between AJ Lee and Becky Lynch and CM Punk and Seth Rollins is much more watered down than is perceived. Becky Lynch worked hard yesterday to make AJ Lee come off ring rust, nothing. AJ Lee did a great job. There was some timing issues that were off, if we're being honest. You look at some of the timing, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say AEW-ish, because I think people need to stop trying to judge AEW the same way they judge WWE. Stop doing that. You don't judge TNA on the same level as WWE. You don't judge Defi, GCW, MLW, TNA, NXT. You don't judge anybody on the level of WWE except for WWE. Stop trying to judge them the same way. You're not going to get these deep bloodline-esque storylines. You're not going to get long-term booking. The only time there's long-term booking when somebody gets injured or something just kind of like fades away and they decide to bring it back. Oh, look, long-term booking. Oh, look, the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express, long-term booking. No, it's just, hey, let's revisit something that worked before. Stop. Even with this rumored sale that might happen with Warner Brothers Discovery, people were DMing me stupid shit yesterday. DT, how could you say that AEW, if they got canceled, that this isn't, they could be jeopardized? You got fucking Amazon. You got fucking so many streaming platforms. Do you realize how many platforms there are? It ain't just Netflix and ESPN and Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount and Peacock, Your Cock. It's a lot of others. This is 2001 in a lot of ways, and I wrote it on Twitter. But where it stops is it's not a publicly traded company. It's owned by Tony Khan. That guy has no problem losing hundreds of millions of dollars for his happiness. They are billionaires, 10 times over. They could. I brought this up countless times over the years. You could lose $100 million a year for AEW for 20 years, and that doesn't even affect 15% of their net worth. If I'm Tony Khan and I got that fucking kind of money, and I'm a hardcore wrestling fan, and I'm putting something on TV, look at fucking Impact Wrestling. How many of you out there thought that when Dixie Carter was at the helm, that they were making money when Hogan was there? Anybody really think that they were making big time money? No, it felt like they were losing. But Dixie Carter was in charge and the family was fine with it until the family wasn't fine with it anymore. So this is much different in 2001, that he's got the money. He could run it wherever he wants. He could fucking just go on YouTube. He could have his own streaming platform and it'll be fine. If there's any great example of that, look at Impact. Look at TNA. TNA, I think many people feel, probably could have closed down many, 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 many years ago. many years ago. COVID might have saved their ass a little bit because they cut down on a lot of touring expenses, a lot of production costs. COVID might be a case. COVID devastated NWA. But I think COVID in some ways helped Impact Wrestling stick around a little bit longer. And, they've obviously turned the corner now, and that's a good thing. But getting back to the mixed tag yesterday, the mixed tag was a lot of fun. Some of it went a little bit over the top, with the antics with AJ Lee, especially when, Becky Lynch is throwing punches like Michael J. Fox probably does right now, if we're all being honest. Like almost like airplane spin, like airplanes with the arms, and like nobody does that. The only time I've seen that recently is somebody turn a turtle upside down. Turn a turtle upside down when it's on its shell, and the feet and the arms are like this. That's what Becky Lynch looked like. You hate AJ Lee that much that you're going to beat her up so bad that CM Punk may leave you, and then you do this. I have no problem with it because I know what it truly was. It was trying to blur the lines between where hate and entertainment cross, and they did a great job. AJ Lee looked great. There was a couple of points that I was a little concerned, that she might have banged her head a couple of times, but they're pros. They're pros. When we did predictions last Monday, that was one match that I think we guaranteed would be pretty damn solid. And everybody delivered in that match. I think they delivered more than what was anticipated. Now we got to see if AJ Lee starts challenging Becky Lynch for that championship. And I think that could happen, especially when you think about they're going to go to Australia, and then you think eventually they go to Saudi Arabia. You got the Royal Rumble. There's a lot of ways they could do this. Probably you want to do it now than later, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much yesterday. That match and Io Sky and Stephanie Vaquer were my two favorite matches of the night. Boy, it's a shame that we're not going to see Io and Stephanie go at it one-on-one again anytime soon, because they're both baby faces. But this is going to obviously open up Monday Night Raw. Not the beginning. I mean, it's going to lead to the Kabuki Warriors turning on Io Sky. I kind of wish that storyline would have happened at Wrestlepalooza, because wasn't Triple H like promising surprises? Pat McAfee coming out. There's a surprise. Stephanie in the Hall of Fame. Undertaker. Anybody get a weird vibe with Undertaker that you thought that he was going to say something like, I quit? Fuck you. Did anybody get that vibe when he got to ringside? And Stephanie, her hands must have been hurting because she just kept going. And if we're being honest, so we could be a little bit piggy for a minute, there was things jiggling and she's just like this. And I'm looking at the people around. I'm like, she just kept going and going and going. And then Undertaker gets up to her and, did she know? I don't know, because Stephanie was, if you looked at her facial, I had to take the glasses off for this. Stephanie had the facial reactions that podcasters do. Did you see all of the forced emotions that people put on social media yesterday with the hopes that WWE sees it? I watched this, and I'm not going to name any names, but you'll know who I'm talking about. Stephanie's sitting at ringside, and Undertaker has the mic. He's, Steph, we go back. And she's got the same look that the podcasters were fucking doing yesterday. They were doing this. When Undertaker's like, we go back a long ways. Where you going with this? And Stephanie was doing the same thing. And if you ever notice, the one thing I hate about Stephanie is her nose, because when she smiles, it gets crinkled. It gets shriveled and crinkled, and it turns even more like a point. But she was doing that yesterday. And then they revealed the Hall of Fame announcement, obviously. But Triple H promised a whole bunch of surprises. I even did a bonus question for our contests. How many non-wrestlers were going to get physical yesterday? You would think ESPN, I mean, with all due respect, Tyrese Halliburton, I like him, but I get a little cringy when he's on the guest panel before the event starts and he's like, I would love once to just dive on like 30 people or go through a table. I don't know, it just comes off cringy, but there was like no surprises yesterday. Why not have the Kabuki Warriors come out after? You needed the help. Beat her up. You telling me that Rhea Ripley running down to make the save wouldn't have been an awesome surprise for not only everybody at home, but everybody live in the crowd? Have the Kabuki Warriors beat the fuck out of Io. Stephanie could try to help save face. She gets thrown out of the ring. But no, they don't even have the Kabuki Warriors even come out. I was like, well, that's kind of like uneventful. But that match was awesome, man. It was so good. See, I don't know if you noticed, I'm starting to change the background a little bit. I have new artwork coming. And after last night's match, I have an artwork coming of Io Sky and Stephanie Vicaire. And we'll rotate a lot more. I have a bunch of things coming. Somebody is sending me something really, really cool that we'll be able to give away in the near future. I don't want to give it away now, but let's just say it's a mask. And it's a very popular mask right now in the WWE. If you're a patriot, I think you could figure out what it is. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put it on during the show. So if we do give it away, you're going to have to forgive me that I will have it on at least once. I will sanitize it before I ship it. But someone's sending it for the show as a little gift. So I will shout that person out when it arrives because I don't believe nobody until I see it, with all due respect. Oh, I could say it. It's a Grande Americano mask, and it's a real one. Sewed everything. I'll see when I get it. No Demonito, though, but I do have something Demonito coming. Something Demonito. So, Io Sky and Stephanie Vicaire tore it up yesterday. And the crowd kept chanting, "This is awesome," and it was deservingly so. And it was a great match to showcase what the women in WWE could do. They're badass. Not just hot asses, badasses. They tore it up yesterday. And to me, that was my favorite match of them all. When it wasn't even close. I mean, the mixed tag was fun, but the mixed tag was more of an entertainment. That would have been a great Saturday night's main event. Going back 80s, 90s, that would have been a great Saturday night's main event. Main event. I have to say it twice because the main event of Saturday night's main event. Stephanie could do it, man. And we should appreciate the fact, not that AEW didn't sign her. AEW has their women's roster and they have a hard time, getting people consistently on a certain level. I mean, Chris Statlander winning the belt yesterday, deserved? Absolutely. But you need us remember that she beat Jay Cargill and she's had runs and they've kind of like not known what to do. Now, last time she suddenly turned heel and was with Stokely until somebody got injured and then suddenly she was babyface again. I like Chris Statlander. But at this stage of the game, what next? What next? So the women showed that they're not eye candy, like many people may envision them to be, that don't pay attention to wrestling, and they could do things now that were only in limited spurts back in the day. What used to be tremendous finishers are now just a part of a match, and they killed it. They killed it. And Io Sky, man, that puts a smile on my face of everybody this year. Io Sky has got to be near the top of my list as far as women's wrestlers go. Because early this year, God rest his soul, when Kevin and I were talking early this year, what do we used to call her? Grumpy Cat. She never fucking smiled. Every week, look, Grumpy Cat, Grumpy Cat, Grumpy, 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 Grumpy Cat, Grumpy Cat. Yeah, every week, Grumpy Cat. Once in a while, you saw a little smirk. And WrestleMania came. And just everything changed. WrestleMania came, she fucking won. And the crowd, I mean, it wasn't just WrestleMania. It was leading up to it. But WrestleMania was that point where you're like, okay, all right. You know, she's on that level of what Asuka's popularity used to be. She's made right now. And, you know, her losing yesterday, she lost nothing. She lost nothing. Because she is safe as a bona fide main eventer. Everybody likes her. You know, even Kairi Sane, albeit losing many more than winning, she's finding herself. You know, she does little things that just make that personality just that much more likable. Everybody's fitting in nicely. And if we're honest, WWE has had a horrible time the way to utilize Japanese wrestlers in the past. Asuka was one of the very, very few that was able to get through. Now, you know, everybody seems to be doing quite well. I don't know what's next for Stephanie Vaquer. I almost feel number one contenders battle royal gauntlet match, because I think Kabuki Warriors beat the shit out of Io Sky. Rhea Ripley makes the save, and there's your tag team feud for the present. So we got to start thinking like, okay, who's Stephanie Vaquer going to feud with first? You know, so I almost feel like they're going to do some type of like tournament or something out there. I mean, they have some people. You know, I'm sure Natty at some point, you know, the boat, the goat, the tote, whatever she is, the yote. You know, she's Jim's daughter. She's going to come out there and demand respect. Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre. I'll say this. People are comparing Drew McIntyre to Kevin Owens from last year, and that's a great comparison. But where were all of you for the last bunch of months? There's no room for Drew McIntyre winning a championship right now. Right now, you're not taking it off of Cody Rhodes. So who's Cody supposed to face? Like who's Drew McIntyre? If anything, you know, Drew McIntyre could become soon enough the United States champion. You know, but world champion, that shit ain't changing right now. You can't take it off of Seth Rollins because of division. You're not taking it off of Cody, you know, right now. That would be very weak. They're saving it for much bigger rainy days. So what did you expect with Drew McIntyre yesterday? You had to do the knee thing because you didn't want him to just job clean. There was no other way to do it yesterday. Now, someone will probably mock Drew or vice versa, and you'll have an Acme Insta feud, and Drew McIntyre, I'm sure, will still stick around, or who knows, we might have a 3-way or a 4-way in Australia. But the match was fine yesterday, but it didn't feel that it should have closed the event. I get why they closed it. Because you want to make, especially ESPN, you want to make it seem like the biggest championship in the WWE is the one that closes the show. Even if Hulk Hogan was fighting Jimmy Jack Funk. You know what I mean? Like, if Hulk Hogan was fighting Jimmy Jack Funk defending the WWF Championship yesterday, that would have closed it out. Because you got to make it seem like the biggest championship is the one that you put the most importance on, closes out the event. So I get why they chose that match to close out the show, but the outcome was not going to be anything different. Now, Brock Lesnar and John Cena. I love all the Monday morning quarterbackers that once SmackDown happened and you got the different vibe with Brock Lesnar and you started to see where this is changing a little bit, now everybody's like, of course he was supposed to win. John Cena had an 85% chance of winning in Vegas odds. So for all of the people out there that are hearing journalists and podcasters and all these quote-unquote experts telling you, you see, he was winning all along. Blah, 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 blah. Well, how come you didn't bet your fucking house on Las Vegas? You would have won a lot of money. You know, it's funny how people say this shit afterwards. I did my predictions last Monday, so I couldn't change my shit. But I will say this. Now it makes John Cena's final 3 months a little bit more interesting because John Cena cannot retire on an absolute losing streak. There's got to be some type of redemption there. And I still think Gunther could be a part of it. If he is recovered from his surgery, that's an if. You know, Gunther, we don't know the extent. He could be back in a week or two. I don't know. But if that surgery was more serious than was expected or the recovery is slower, you may have to do an audible and have John Cena revisit Brock Lesnar again between now and December. Don't know if that'll happen, but it's obvious. It's obvious that Brock Lesnar, they're not going to use him to put anybody else over unless that rare Goldberg. You're just not. Maybe Gunther down the line with Brock. But right now, you bring Brock back. If he loses after what happened on Friday SmackDown, if we would have lost yesterday, send him back home. Send him back hunting. It's getting cold out in Saskatchewan. Brock, go hunting. Go hunt for deer. Go hunt for pussy. Go hunt for deer. Go hunt for duck. Go hunt for Janelle. You know, go hunt for something else. Don't be on WWE television anymore. After what we saw on SmackDown and after what we saw yesterday, it was the right way to go. Absolutely right way to go. But I remind you, Las Vegas had the odds at 85% that John Cena was winning. So don't listen to that noise. That's people trying to make themselves smarter than what they really are. When you got to do that, yeah, there's a little bit of what's that word? A little bit of self-consciousness, you know, a little bit of insecurity there. By the way, I got to share something. I got a little treat for you all. If you don't like Dave Meltzer, I got a treat for you. I actually have two. I'm not sure if I'm going to play the other one, but the match with John Cena and Brock Lesnar was not the same vibe of SummerSlam. SummerSlam was a purge. SummerSlam was a fucking purge. People were so tired of the way Cena was being portrayed at the time that it was almost like Vince was like, all right, one night only, we're just going to have Cena get fucking destroyed, have Brock do it. And it was like, wow, you know, and believe it or not, I have an episode of the Don, Tony, and Kevin Castle show that I am going to put on all the platforms this week. And you'll hear Kevin, my reaction to when Brock destroyed John Cena at SummerSlam. It was a purge. It felt like, okay, we'll give you this. Here's your gift. And that's it. No more. Yesterday was more of a case of a madman, a maniac. As far as storyline goes, remember the AJ Styles, the other AJ, the other white meat. Remember the AJ Styles thing is somebody in the back don't want me to be here. I don't think this is turning into the storyline that people think it is. But this could be a case where Brock coming back, take out John Cena, they could tie it into Rock. they could tie it into other ways. That the reason why Brock came back was at the request of somebody to take his fucking ass out for going back to the good side or whatever it is, because you got to pay attention to the way Joe Tessitore just explained it to ESPN viewers that may not watch WWE. I put the video for our channel members here on Wednesday. Watch the beginning of that episode, and WWE allowed me to play it. Listen closely how he describes what happened with John Cena earlier this year. Rock brought him to the dark side. Then he saw the light. And as soon as he sees the light, here comes Brock Lesnar. Remember, Brock Lesnar didn't just show up yesterday or SmackDown. He showed up the night that John Cena regained the championship because John Cena had turned back to the good side right before that match and pissed off somebody, so they came calling to Brock Lesnar. And I think it was very, very smart. I think it was very, very smart that ESPN is now on record saying, we had nothing to do with WWE bringing back Brock Lesnar. That's smart on two reasons. You know why it's smart on two reasons? Number one, it could enhance the storyline. Like, because a lot of us thought, ESPN, $1 billion deal, let's bring back the fucking MMA guy, wrestler, football player, college, champion. Bring back Brock. Made all sense to impress ESPN. Look, we have the multifaceted Brock Lesnar, and he's better than ever. You heard Michael Cole say he looks better than he did 10 years ago. They were doing that for ESPN. Why was ESPN smart this week? Two reasons. Number one, if this develops into a storyline, has nothing to do with ESPN. Number two, Janelle Grant's lawyers can't fucking have a conniption at ESPN now. Look, ESPN even allows somebody who almost a superhero, almost a sexual predator, almost a cheating husband, almost this, almost that, almost is not good enough. So ESPN wipes their hands from this. Very, very smart. Brock looks like a fucking beast, man. Beast. Remember, it was only a month and a half ago that people were posting that picture of him posing with two fans. Oh, Brock Lesnar retired. He has no interest in coming back. Why even open your mouth and say something that you have no idea the answer of? And then shit like this happens. We remember the stupidity. We remember lots of stupidity. So before I share my little Meltzer surprise, which is not a big deal, but you'll get a kick out of it. I know someone out there will enjoy it. Wrestlepalooza was okay. I'll tell you this much. You know my third favorite part of Wrestlepalooza was? The intro. The intro shows how old I am. Look closely. I got some gray hairs now. Wrestlepalooza that intro revealed how old I am. Every clip that they showed, I was alive for. And I was old enough to remember it. I remember when ESPN first debuted. I don't think I was watching every minute when it came out, but I remember when it first debuted. And you saw that old WWF footage. I was alive. I became a wrestling fan in 1979, right at that time. Everything that they showed, it was like, whoa. It brought back a lot of memories. And it made me feel good to see Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow. Because you got all these what culture fools and these people with these countdowns on YouTube. Oh, the worst WrestleMania match of all time. I was friendly with Bam Bam Bigelow, God rest his soul. Remember, I sold the ECW ring and got ripped off. Bam Bam owned that ring. Bam Bam wanted me to sell all of his collectibles on eBay. From the Lawrence Taylor jersey and the helmet, he was a huge Brett Favre mark. And I didn't sell any of his stuff. Even when he was pushing his 900 hotline with football picks. Ask the Mass Maniac. Mass Maniac's still around. He'll vouch for all this. Mass Maniac was very good friends with Bam Bam Bigelow back then. He gave a lot for that match, and he was a huge football fan. Bam Bam wanted to do that match and loved the fucking match. did the best he could with Lawrence Taylor. And I appreciate the crossover because that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to make it come across that, look, wrestling is entertainment. Sports is entertainment. Of course it is. Anything you watch is entertainment. Unfortunately, news is entertainment. Hate is entertainment. Everything you watch is entertainment. The fact that you tune into something, you find it entertaining. And that video package yesterday was one of my favorite video packages that WWE's ever done. You know, even throwing back a little bit of 70s, you know, rock to it. You know, let me put it this way. That video package would have sucked balls if if you had like a hip hop artist, you know, doing it. You know what I mean? Like if you have one of these hip hop, you just pick whoever you want. You had to give that old school retro vibe in your face. You know, you weren't going to do Travis Scott. If they would have done Travis with that fucking music playing with ESPN, I would have turned it off. I would have reported my credit card stolen and said, listen, somebody stole my credit card. I did not authorize this ESPN charge. No. Even though I pressed this and pressed that, no. I didn't do that. Somebody hacked my account. It was everything about it I enjoyed. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Wrestlepalooza. For $30, I give it a 6.5. Give it a 6.5. You know, if it was $9.99 or $4.99 or Peacock free, because I don't pay for Peacock because I'm an Instacart Plus subscriber. And you're very welcome for those that still have only like heard it from here. I probably would have given it maybe a 7.5. But for $30, you know, it's borderline. I say 6.5, and I think I'm being a little generous there. All right. If you didn't check out the history show that I uploaded this weekend, yes, one of the memories is, you know, the birth of the List of Jericho. We revisited that. We revisited a lot of things. But when I was going through my old notes, I found 2 gems involving Dave Meltzer and Braun Alvarez. And, you know, I'm not saying this to be a jerk, but I'm still convinced that this born-again, it's almost like a born-again Christian. It's almost like if you ever saw the movie The Blues Brothers, when John Belushi sees the light, I've seen the light, and he starts doing all the flips. Braun Alvarez, after all these fucking decades, suddenly is like a big debater of Dave Meltzer over everything. I think that was because numbers were hemorrhaging. You know, they were losing a lot of revenue, and they were like, okay, you know, I have to be more of like, if you're Hannity, I'm Combs. If you're this, I'm that. You know, I got to kind of like take the opposite side, even if I don't want to. So I want to flash back to 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Toni Storm. She was in WWE, and at this time, she's only on the main roster for 2 months. Toni Storm was in the WWE farm system for 4 years. NXT UK, NXT. And Toni Storm, you remember her rocker character? We saw her for 4 years. We fell in love with Toni Storm doing that. She comes to the main roster, and obviously she got frustrated and quit within 4 months of being on TV. So I want to set the stage. So after 4 years of us seeing Toni Storm in this character, she's on the main roster now for just 2 months. And going through my notes in This Week in Wrestling History, I found this clip of Braun Alvarez and Dave Meltzer discussing Toni Storm, who had just appeared on SmackDown. Listen to this.
Toni Storm is an 80s rocker, even though she wasn't even born in the 80s. And they actually explain it in the sense that her mother was an 80s rocker, so she learned from her mother.
Can you imagine if in the middle of the Monday Night Wars we had a character that was like really into the twist?
We did have Disco Inferno.
I mean, this 40 years ago. Disco would have been the 70s. This was in the 90s.
But
the 80s were 40 years ago. So we're talking in the 90s. We've been talking about some dance craze from the 50s. That's how far back we're talking.
Well, we had Honky Tonk Man, then that's Elvis, and Elvis was the 50s.
Yeah, he was like a geek heel. She's supposed to be like, I don't know what she's supposed to be.
A cool rocker chick. That's what she's supposed to be.
Well, you know, this nostalgia thing.
I guess the timeless gimmick wouldn't work then, right? They didn't even give it a chance. And she was doing that gimmick for 4 fucking years. But the one I really wanted to share with you is this. For everybody out there that likes to troll each other about AEW and WWE, 4 years ago this week, they put out a claim. Dave Meltzer claimed that he knew about this all along. And understand, and this is very important, and I'm not making this up, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not lying. You know, AEW is not a publicly traded company. So when Tony Khan says, oh, I heard from someone that whatever it is true, understand that he's a billionaire, child, wrestling fan. If he believes what somebody randomly said was true, this is not based on scientific data. This is the guy that said that bots were the ones all over Twitter that were ripping AEW. He's the one who had all his scientific proof but never bothered to show it. Why wouldn't you show it? If you really want to accuse WWE of doing something heinous, why wouldn't you put it out there? Convince us. No, I heard this. I heard that. I have sources. That's what someone does when it's not a publicly traded company and has the money of a billionaire, but the mindset of a 14-year-old. So look at BJ Bethel. When BJ Bethel said, oh, max 500, 600,000 subscribers. And everybody believed it. Not everybody, but, and then when people challenged Tony Khan, well, I heard from someone. So 4 years ago, Tony Khan goes on Bloomberg and makes a claim that more college-educated people watch AEW than WWE. Okay, fine. Wherever you got that from, fine. I fault Bloomberg for saying, source from where? Never revealed it. I think Bloomberg just wanted to finish the interview and move on. Just like earlier this year when Tony Khan was on a fucking ship in where was he? Chile or Mexico? Remember he was doing that interview wearing the shades? And he said, we're made more money this year and blah, blah, blah. And AEW's got better ratings than it did a year ago. And we're doing so much better. And the guy interviewing him was like, sourced on what? Oh, no, I tuned into Dynamite. Blah, 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 blah. And the guy's like, all right, let me just move on from this guy. So this conversation leads to about income. I want you to hear this, and I think I have the picture to back it up, and then I'll tell you where this came from. Listen to this clip. It's pretty fucking fascinating.
Tony Khan was on Bloomberg, and there were some interesting things because they go you're the rival, and, they've got the leading market share. And Tony said, and some people now hearing this will probably get very upset, but he just goes, there are metrics where we're number one, and we're number one in the world. And he says, and he was basically saying that you can argue that we're number one in the world. And it's like, at first you go, come on. But you know what? It's like, in this month, there's going to be metrics where you can say that attendance wise, they're going to be number one. You can't say pay-per-view, but pay-per-view wise, they are the number one pay-per-view pro wrestling company in the world. He also said, by the way, that they're well over 200,000 now on the pay-per-view buys for the last show. But the other things, so he recited a bunch of stats that we talk about all the time anyway. But there were a couple of new ones that'll probably get people upset too. So one of them is that, I mean, we already know. Okay, they're the youngest skewing wrestling show on television, and he noted most weeks are the youngest skewing sports show on television, which many weeks they are. It's them or soccer. I think during the NBA season, there's weeks where it's the NBA, but it's basically AEW, NBA, and international soccer are the three youngest ones. And take your pick. They're all but they are the three youngest ones. Okay, so the other one is that the AEW audience is the most affluent in median family income of any pro wrestling audience, and also it is the highest percentage of college educated audience. So anyway, people can get mad at that one too. So, but those were when he was talking about different stuff. I mean, I had never heard the college educated one. I'm not sure where he got that, but again, he's real big into that stuff. So he probably knows the median income stuff. I did know. I had heard that from basically from the start. That it was 20% above WWE. So, that's and it's not a surprise, even though it skews younger. And obviously WWE skewing older, because it skews older, should have the advantage in that, but they don't. So, whatever. Anyway, everyone can bat that one around. Next.
AEW fans make more money than WWE fans. Would you like to know where that came from? This is beautiful, man. This is why you always have to understand it's not a publicly traded company, and you're dealing with somebody that is, Tony Khan. You know where that came from? WrestleNomics back in 2021, and they continued it in 2022 and continued in 2023. They did a grid. And they said that, I don't have it in front of me, but still on their website, AEW fans average $61,000 a year income. Impact Wrestling had the poorest wrestling fans, averaging $37,000 in income. I think WWE was somewhere like in the middle with like $56,000 or something. Do you know where these geniuses got that from? Let me just show you, and you'll realize if you have half a brain, you'll realize how awful this is. They based it on the U.S. Census. How many of you out there ever get that census in the mail and just throw it in the garbage? They based it on a census. And what they did, and it's almost genius until you actually dissect it, and then you understand why no one else in the business world ever does this. They looked at the demo. They looked at the demo that AEW was doing 4 years ago. And they said, oh, look, the demo does this percentage of wrestling of 18 to 34 viewers, 25 to 34 viewers. So what they did was they took the percentage of the viewership by the demo, and then they looked at the census to see how much was a 25-year-old making? How much was a 34-year-old making? And that's where they based it on. Not realizing, number one, the census is not complete, obviously, but you didn't break it down, and I'm not trying to cause controversy, but we got to say it. Well, how many of that 25 to 34 are black? Because a lot of people think that black people make less than white. How many of that 25 to 34 were women? How many of the 25 to 34 were this? You're just basing it on age and what someone writes on a piece of paper. Sorry, guys. If I fucking fill out an application, hey, DT, how much money you making? My wife is sitting right next to me. Oh, I make $160,000. Am I getting pussy tonight? You're basing it on a census. That's what they did. They looked at the demo and then matched it with the census and said, oh, look at this. That's where this all came from. It still lingers to this day. I think it's almost as ridiculous as Ricochet, and I'm a big supporter of Ricochet, and I praised his run in AEW completely, but I will say this. When Ricochet has the balls to say this week that maybe families, because WWE is so expensive, maybe families should consider AEW. Yeah, that's what I want my kid to see, a fucking syringe in a mouth, fucking setting someone on fire, fucking using Legos, glass, this and that. And WWE does shit too. Few and far between. You're not family-friendly programming. You know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have my kids, which I don't have, but I'm not going to have my kids watch adult TV because it's cheaper. That's almost as saying like, oh, you know, maybe I should buy this food product in the store. I know it's not healthy for my kid, but it's only $2 compared to $8 for something else. It's funny how the people in AEW that make this retarded, stupid claims don't have children of their own. Have some kids that are preteens and then have them sit there and watch some of those things. And then let's see how you feel. Take note of most of the people that say this retardedly stupid shit don't have kids. Or their kids are grown up and adults. All right. Before we get to your questions, we're already an hour in, so we're about halfway done. A lot of you emailed me. A lot of you wanted my thoughts on it. I'm going to give you my quick thoughts. Raja Jackson, finally arrested. Now, you remember about 3 weeks ago, I had talked to a few friends of mine that live in California. Now, they're not hoods. They're not hood rats. They're not from the streets. Yo, this is not like Huggy Bear and fucking that 70s TV show. He's on the streets with Starsky and Hutch. Hey, I heard from the source. I said, what's the local vibe in L.A. about this situation with Raja Jackson? And if you remember about 3 weeks ago, I said that Raja Jackson did speak to investigators. Raja Jackson spoke to investigators a few times. Ignore CNN's stupid article. Ignore their article because they didn't even fucking do any research. There was a kick logo in the bottom, so we believe that he might have been live streaming. Did you fucking even watch it when he was arguing with all of his viewers? 50 subs and I'll knock his ass out. Then you got, I don't remember what news outlet it was. I think it might have been MSNBC. And they were like downplaying it like nothing really happened. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how he had met with investigators a couple of times. So a couple of days ago, he was arrested. TMZ got footage from a neighbor that lived with Raja Jackson. I got the footage. I'm going to share with you in a minute. But I will tell you from what I was told from a few people that I trust, they're not inside scoops. They're not from the hood. They're not MMA guys. They're not from his camp. It's just what people are basically talking about in that neck of the woods. And from what I was told, Raja Jackson, when he spoke to investigators originally, emphasized that this was part of the show. And that, almost, I think even some people said that he made the claim that Psycho Stu told him, lay it in. I laughed at one news article. I don't think it was ESPN. I'm not going to suddenly praise ESPN every single time. I think they actually were the ones that wrote this. They said that it was part of the show that went too far. That he's not a wrestler. He shouldn't have even been in there. Nobody fucking told you to hit him 38,000 times in the fucking mouth and break all his bones. You're an MMA guy. You know the damage you could do. If I go up to all of you right now and say, hey guys, look, this is my sausage. This is ceramic. This thing weighs about 15 pounds, and I'm not even kidding. This weighs more than a championship belt. If I say, listen, just for part of the podcast, I want you to crack this over my head. Just lay it in there. Come on, don't be a pussy. Lay it in there. You don't have balls? Fucking nail me, motherfucker. And you turn around and you crack me over the head and I break all the bones in my face. You think the cops are going to be like, he told you to do it. Hey, you shouldn't have told him to do it. Cops spoke to Psycho Stu. Psycho Stu said, no. he probably was like, no. And investigators, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because, like you, I say, why did this take so long? Why did this take so long? And the only thing that I was told that kind of makes sense, even though it doesn't, but it does, is that investigators wanted to be sure 100% that they had a clear, tight case that this was felony assault. And once they determined that, yes, this is airtight, no other way to do it. Plus, they also had to pull a lot of the streams. And Kick has already banned Raja Jackson from their platform. A lot of those streams are gone. So they had to go based on third-hand footage online that people were showing. It's not as easy as you think, especially if they solicited the original Kick streams. You know, this is not the only case that LA works on. I'm not defending them, but they solicited this information from Kick. They didn't take snippets from my podcast or your podcast or Dutch Mantel's podcast or this person's podcast. No, they get it directly from Kick. And once they got everything together and they said, yeah, we got to bring him in. This is the footage. And how fucking ironic is it? How ironic is it that as this guy is walking by, he gives that look to his neighbor that I'm going to beat you worse than Psycho Stu for recording me right now. This guy did not want to be recorded. Let me put on my jacket so it doesn't look like I have handcuffs. Here comes the stair. You see it? Now, I know some asshole's going to be out there and say, oh, you're just gloating because he's black. I don't give a fuck if he's black, white, blue, green, straight, gay, trans, not trans, identifies as he, she, it, they, fucking barks, meows. I don't care what they are. All right. This is ridiculous that this took a month, but obviously, legally, things have to be handled differently. I don't know what the outcome will be. He's already released. He had $50,000. Oh, that was another thing. He had $50,000 bail, not bond. It's a big difference there. You know, bond is 10% of bail. If somebody says you're being held on $50,000 bond, all you got to do is, if you have collateral, pay $5,000. I write bonds. I'm in the insurance business. I've written many surety bonds, contractors bonds. A bond is 10% of its value. When you get held on bail, whatever the amount is, that's the amount you got to come up with. So he was held on pretty significant amount of money. He's already been released. He's got legal counsel. I have a feeling that he may plead to a lesser offense. Does he do jail time? I have no idea. I just hope this never happens again. He's not a kid. You know, stop with this shit. He's not a kid. He's in his mid fucking 20s. If he was 19, then you say he's a kid. You know, just because a Hall of Fame wrestler, we're not going to say who they are, just because you're in your 50s or 60s, anybody that's half your age you consider a kid. Yeah, it's just a kid. He's a kid. No, he's not a fucking kid. I hope it never happens again. And again, this defense of, he told me to do it. telling you, if he told you to jump off the bridge, would you do it? He told you to fucking put a bullet through his head, would you do it? So this idea that, oh, no, he told me to do this. I just, just went too far. Stupid. Stupid. Now we can get to your questions. We will finish this up in about 45 minutes. So we got plenty of time. So I want to shout out T. Smitty. What's up, Dogfather? I know I didn't turn the hat this time around. Have I heard anything on when Bianca may return? I hope very, very soon. She's had the injury to her fingers. I heard that she's doing much better. Has she been training at the Performance Center? I haven't heard anything about that. But the fact that they made her make an appearance for NXT Homecoming, that was a nice gesture. I think she'll be back soon enough. I tell you the truth, I would be shocked if she's not back within a month. I mean, I haven't heard any complications either. And she's done some interviews, and from what I've read and seen, it's just healing. Bianca definitely had, a good run. Naomi is his favorite wrestler of the year. She had an awesome year. Remember, PWI's 500 is about to come out. And then the women's one will come out shortly thereafter. I believe Mercedes Moné is the women's wrestler of the year. I know some people will disagree with it. I know some people will think the belts thing is, almost like a joke at some point. I'll say this, she has not put on a bad match. Naomi, I tell you the truth, if I give anything to Naomi this year, I would give her comeback wrestler of the year. I know. She was in TNA. But I also feel, from where she was, and then she was gone for a little while, I would seriously consider putting Naomi as, she's definitely worthy of winning something. I would consider maybe Naomi as comeback wrestler of the year. And remember, you have to have a certain number of matches to qualify. So there are some others that have recovered from injury, but not have had many matches. So I hope Camille is comeback wrestler of the year for 2026, because it's fucking mind-boggling that they're still not using her, AEW. Just think about that. She's not a kid either. Look at Camille's age and how she spent her first year in AEW. She's been there over a year already. Look how they've used her. That thumbnail I did about Deonna Purrazzo back in June, I think that's aged very, very well. Sadly. So Naomi had a great year, man. She had a great year. Listen, she's having a kid. So we can't say, man, it just sucks, the way the year went out. She's ecstatic. She's going to have a baby. So real life comes before her job in entertainment. The good thing about Naomi, she's still extremely young. And once she has her baby and she feels it's ready for her to come back, she will come back, and she'll be able to pick up where she left off. And we'll love every minute of it. So very cool. Very cool. Simple website hostings. DT, can I tell everyone the story of the debut of Superfly Sifiafi and my favorite WWF troll job gimmick? I wish you would have told me this a couple hours early. I would have brought the audio with me too. My all-time favorite troll job of the year, of life. My favorite WWF troll job. We've had screw jobs. But the ultimate troll job that WWF ever did was in, 1986, I think it was. Snuka was gone. Obviously, we know the reasons why. And it's beautiful. You got to go on YouTube, watch the video. It's amazing that WWF used the song Shaft. That 70, you're damn right. They used the song Shaft. I could only imagine Vince McMahon at that time laughing his ass off how he was going to shaft the Madison Square Garden fans. That fucking music started playing. And Howard Finkel goes, "From the Fiji Islands," and pauses. Everybody got out of their fucking feet, or out of their seat, looked to the rampway, because they thought that Snuka was returning. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes out and he yells, "Superfly!" And the crowd erupts so loud they can't hear Howard Finkel say, "Sifi Afi." They can't hear it because the crowd is that loud. And I felt bad for Sifi Afi because you see him walk down the rampway and the crowd is fucking going nuts. And everybody's jumping and cheering, so they can't even see that it's this fucking 5-foot fucking Fijian midget. And he's walking down the rampway and everybody's happy. And he's got this smile from ear to ear. He is on cloud nine. He's like, "Oh my God, give me the championship. I'm the most amazing. I'm over." He fucking walks in the ring and starts doing this fucking squirmy leg thing like he was caught in quicksand. And the crowd starts realizing, the fuck is this? I mean, if Wish or Temu was around in the 80s, you just bought Jimmy Snuka on Temu. Literally, you bought an Alibaba. He's fucking in the ring and he starts doing this fire thing, and some people are like, fucking I hope he has hairspray on. Let's see Michael Jackson, Pepsi commercial. Let's see that fucking afro go on fire, you fuck. So the music calms down. No more Shaft music. And he's having a match. And all you hear is, "We want Snuka. We want Snuka. We want Snuka." And when he won, they booed. They hated him. He never recovered. It's the ultimate troll job that's never talked about. Just picture Vince McMahon in the mid-'80s saying, "I'm going to troll these motherfuckers, make them think Snuka's coming out." And it's such an amazing song to use. I mean, too bad they didn't use Rick Ashley back at the time. You know, that song I think might have been around, but it was still popular at that time. I fucking hate that song too, but that's my favorite troll job that WWF has ever done. It's amazing. Loved it. Loved it. They said he was a cousin of Jimmy Snuka. It didn't matter. They could have had some type of fucking, you know how you could clone dogs and clone? They could have said it was his clone. They could have said anything. It didn't matter. It wasn't Snuka. It wasn't Snuka. Yeah, Ron Shaw, that was his opponent. January 27th, 1986. I think that was right before, was that right before, right after the Super Bowl? It was right around the time of the Super Bowl. No, that was 85 Bears. It wasn't the Giants. The Giants won the Super Bowl in 87. Remember, it's always the year before. So, Roderick says, "Why would you do that to your fan base at Madison Square Garden?" Because at the end of the day, you still had Hogan. You had, a lot of the big stars there. So fans were not going. And you got to understand this too. There is no social media. There is no internet. And you go there like you don't know that they're trolling you. Yes, Superfly, but remember, we had, the Wild Samoans, Alpha Sika, and then you had Samula, Samoan number 3. You had originally Demolition, Axe Smash, and then you had Crush. My point is that having another family member, and if you say it's the brother, son, uncle, jilted lover of Snuka, why wouldn't you call him Superfly also? If he's the brother or the nephew of Snuka, why wouldn't you call him Superfly? They called Samula Samoan number 3. So my point is, fans didn't think it was as much of a troll job at the time. Shame on them for not hearing Howard Finkel say Superfly Sifi Afi. So as years went on, you would understand a little bit more. Wow, Vince really fucking trolled the fans that night. I just love that they used the song Shaft. I mean, that song was never associated with Jimmy Snuka. Of all the music you're going to use in 1986, Let's go with a 70s pimp song, Shaft, Isaac Hayes. You're damn right. I mean, I could see if Isaac Hayes was from the Fiji Islands, like that's different. It was just amazing because just the fact that they used that song to me, just if it would have been any other song, it wouldn't have hit the same way. But the fact that they're playing Shaft, that was awesome, man. Super Bowl was the day before. I do remember Super Bowl being right around that time, but that was the Bears winning it. And then the Giants won in 87. And I remember the controversy because the Mets won the World Series in October of 86. And when the Giants won the Super Bowl, our mayor at the time was Ed Koch. I don't know if you remember Ed Koch, and I do remember this. A lot of us wanted to go to the parade. And because they played in the Meadowlands, which is New Jersey, Ed Koch is like, oh, do it in Jersey. Do it in Jersey. Fuck you. Fuck you, Koch. Do it in Jersey. So we were kind of like let down. All right. Tristan wants to know, is my shocking reaction the first time I seen the weird, uncomfortable, disturbing smackdown between Heidenreich and Michael Cole? I laughed. I've always been a fan of Michael Cole. I mean, even when Michael Cole, I didn't like the feud with Jerry Lawler leading to Mania, but I laughed because Heidenreich always reminded me of the Energizer guy. Anybody remember the Energizer guy from the 80s? I don't remember his name, but Heidenreich to me always looked like the Energizer guy. And I was like, if you took the Energizer guy and put him in a gay porn, you got Heidenreich and Michael Cole. We thought of Deliverance. I mean, it was just funny. I listen, you got to remember at that time, we had Mr. McMahon beating up Hornswoggle. One of the most beautiful moments in my wrestling fandomhood. They turned the lights off. And you just heard Hornswoggle crying and begging for his life. And I'm like, motherfucker, why didn't we have WWE Unreal at that time? I want to see the footage. I want to see Vince slapping that motherfucking midget, slapping his ass. They weren't really hitting each other. It's kind of like last week with Penta and the New Day. Remember the segment with Penta and the New Day? They're in the back. We hear something. What's going on? And you hear all this banging, and then you suddenly see Penta on the floor. It looks like he's having a seizure. Nobody really got hit. They're just banging stuff against the wall. But, so we had a few incidents where somebody got beat up, but we didn't really see it. You just had to use your imagination for it. Where did my video go? How long was my video like that? How long was my video like that? I just noticed my video was off the screen. Mark Hicks wants to know, why didn't RVD jump ship to the WWF and WCW in the 90s like Raven, Sandman, and Mikey Whipwreck? Before I answer, how long was the video out? I just noticed it. That was me. I inadvertently, I think, you know what I think happened when I banged the desk? I think I hit the mouse button. 10 seconds? Oh, that's it. All right. Why didn't RVD jump? Well, there's actually a decent answer to this. Rob Van Dam did wrestle in the WWF in the 90s. When they were doing their first ever pay-per-view, Barely Legal, they were teasing, a little bit of a crossover. Remember, ECW invaded Raw in New York City. And that led to, plus I think this week is the anniversary that they showed up on In Your House as well. Remember Bulldogs match and all that? My point is this. RVD was getting crossover. He wrestled on Raw, and that's where the term Mr. Monday Night happened. Rob Van Dam wrestled multiple matches on Raw while he was still under ECW contract. That was the crossover. I remember Sabu came in and took on Too Cold Scorpio. And Sabu was still on ECW's roster, but because of the Monday Night Wars and to get a little bit edgier, they put Sabu on Raw, still wrestling for ECW, put RVD on Raw, and that carried over because, if I remember correctly, there was a flag match. If it wasn't a flag match between Tommy Dreamer and Rob Van Dam, and Tommy Dreamer is wearing the flag of ECW, and Rob Van Dam is wearing the WWF flag, even though he was an ECW wrestler. So he wasn't ready at the time. 1997, he just was finding his groove. It took another 2 years for RVD. Actually, 1998 was an awesome year for RVD as well. Heatwave 98 is still one of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. But RVD, he wasn't ready in 1997. But, they have the invasion of ECW. You could not suddenly have these guys stay on WWF television because it would have made the ECW invasion look more unrealistic. He wasn't ready at the time. Later on, he was ready. And the thing is, when a lot of people jumped to WCW, even when WWF started bringing in some people, they brought in Al Snow and a few others, Rob Van Dam was one of the few that ECW really tried to hold on to. He was their number one guy. And if Rob Van Dam would have left sooner, that would have put ECW might have closed down even sooner. So. Wrestling peaked in 1999, says DJ Razor. I don't think so. I mean, look, this week is the anniversary of This Is Your Life, The Rock. They did an 8.4 rating on television. 8.4. That's not even the peak. I think the peak of television, 1999 is definitely a good year ratings wise. I could see you making the argument for it, and I'll tell you why. Because if you add Raw's rating and Nitro's rating, if you put that shit together, I don't know if wrestling had more viewers ever since. Because remember, once WCW went out of business, the invasion angle, a little watered down because a lot of wrestlers are still under AOL time order. Those contracts to sit at home. So once they finally came in 02, 03, the ratings started to decline. So you know what? 1999 ratings-wise might have been the biggest year. But I think overall, as far as popularity goes, I don't think 1999 would be it. It's damn close. But, it's hard to compare metrics from back then to now. It's so hard. It's almost unfair to do that. But I do remember 1999. I was doing my hotline, and I have some very old hotline reports that are right at the very end of 1999. I remember how we were covering it. And it's pretty wild, because the Monday Night Wars was still going on. ECW was still around. So you still had, a lot of options to choose from. And listen, there wasn't that long of a time before another option came around because WCW went out of business in March of 01, the end of March. Then they did Invasion. Then you had ECW guys and WCW guys showing up. And then by 2002, NWA TNA came around. And even though it was a weekly pay-per-view that you had to pay $9.99 a week for, it was still an alternative. Didn't have a big audience because you were getting nothing for free. But NWA TNA suddenly became another option. And then people, obviously, the ones that WWF decided not to bring in, they went to NWA TNA. And then NWA TNA, tested a few wrestlers that were not really known as of yet. And then they developed. And then some people started realizing, wow, I could make a decent amount of money and not have to work as crazy in the WWF if I go to NWA TNA. And that's why some people left. Some people had no choice but to go there. All right. Just looking, Michael Gonzalez wants to know in terms of quality, my least favorite year of wrestling. Maybe 1993. 1993, around there. 94 might be up there too, but 1994 is when ECW went on my radar. And ECW, it was truly an alternative. And at that time, you started to see Girls Gone Wild, and MMA was still underground fighting, and Jerry Springer, and just a lot of that outlaw stuff. So to have Extreme, plus look at what was on television at that time, to have this Extreme alternative, it was very, very interesting to me. So I think once ECW went on my radar, it became my favorite promotion until it closed. But once it closed, we had a fantasy roster in the WWF, which later became WWE. It was a fantasy roster. So 1992, 1993 was probably the time that I preferred to just go out and have fun with friends than actually catch wrestling every week. I still watched it, but I didn't watch it as closely. The early 2010s, 15s, around there was some testy times, but you still had enough of a loaded roster that there was always somebody or something decent to fall back on. So, it was never to the point where I wanted to just turn it off. Jamie says Jamie wasn't even born in 1993. Yeah, I was born much earlier, Thank you for making me feel old. I know you didn't do it on purpose, but Roddy says, how different would the wrestling landscape be if Cena got released in 2002? Well, it's an impossible question to ask, because you could look at anything in history. You look at an icon and you say, oh, how would basketball have been if Michael Jordan never came around? How would this have been if this person never came around? If Gretzky never came to hockey. I think wrestling would have developed a different, superstar. Who would have been the role model, for children? Remember, Cena was Thugonomics. Cena was Thugonomics for a few years. Then when WWE started to become PG in 05, 06, that's when they started changing it. But remember, even at that time, D-Generation X was hybrided into Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And Triple H and Shawn Michaels were playing off of Shawn Michaels' Born Again Christian thing, and they were still doing a lot of those skits. Remember, Candice Michelle is under the table insinuating that, she's giving a Suki, and there was still remnants of it. But to me, once Vince blew himself up in the limo and then the Benoit tragedy happened, that's where everything changed. There was enough big names that, someone else would have become, a hero. Wrestling, I don't know how wrestling would have turned out. It's an impossible question to say. When people say eliminate one, I'm sure you've seen those online. They'll show you 4 people and say eliminate one from history. Every time I see those, I think to myself, like, oh, I wonder how wrestling would have been if this person never showed up. So many chain of events. You look at Eddie Guerrero. What if Eddie didn't pass away? What if this didn't happen? What if WCW didn't close? Or what if Dixie Carter would have trusted other people? There's so many what ifs. What if Tony Khan wasn't a billionaire bipolar baby? Autistic baby, not bipolar, autistic baby. Where would AEW be now? I think AEW's fine right now. It's just, to me, and I'm not defending AEW when I say this, but to me, the people who bitch about AEW the most are the ones that think that AEW is on the level of WWE, and it's not. It's not. TNA, when it was NWA TNA, when they brought in Kurt Angle, it felt, okay, they're taking their shit more seriously, but you still felt that NWA TNA was here and WWE was here. Too many people out there try to take the storylines of WWE and the bloodline and try to equate it to AEW. Or when Swerve, buys his childhood house and Hangman burns it down and Hangman's sitting there on the chair and they're like, oh, don't tell me that storylines aren't good and blah, 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 blah. Like, stop trying to make it seem this. If you accept that AEW is here, WWE is here, you'll enjoy AEW that much better. That's why AEW has to give you 15 fucking matches and 5-6 hour pay-per-views. They're afraid that if they give you 5 matches, nobody will buy it. So I gotta give you too much food. It's like a buffet. Imagine walking into a China buffet and paying $49.99. You sit down. Well, they got hot dogs, egg rolls, some fucking chicken fingers, and some rice. That's it. They're all good, but I want more. So you show up. Oh my God. Here, Braun Strowman. Remember that food program that Braun Strowman was filming? We talked about like 5-6 months ago. It's about to launch on the USA Network or Peacock, whatever it is. Braun Strowman's food show that WWE's involved with, it's about to launch. I'm going to put the thumbnail tomorrow. I'll put the thumbnail for tomorrow. I would love to pull it now, but I don't want to fuck with the settings and ruin the audio. But when you see the thumbnail and you look at Braun Strowman, look at all the food on the table. Look at all the food on the table. That's what an AEW pay-per-view is. You walk in, I got to pay $60 for a fucking buffet. There better be 90 things on the menu for me to take. So stop trying to put them on even playing field. Rocky Red is saying, do I remember the 21st night of September? Of course I do. Earth, Wind, and Fire, man. Shit, I can't believe nobody posted out on X today. Every year somebody posts Earth, Wind, and Fire. Do you remember the 21st night of September? I used to bang that song back in the day. I used to blast that song in my car. Now I hear it like in a doctor's office, and it's like, it's fun song. Fun song. Reveals my age a little bit more. Yes, he has a cooking show. You know what? I'm going to sacrifice. If my audio goes out for a second, I promise you I'll reload it and it'll be fine. I will download my thumbnail for tomorrow just so I could show you all. Hang on 1 second. It'll take me literally 5 seconds to do because I'm already trying to be one step ahead for the shows this week. I already started working on a history show this week. Yeah, this is my thumbnail for tomorrow. The Monster Among Menus. There you go. That is a real picture. That is his show. He goes around the country and he eats like a fucking pig. He eats like a pig. I wish he would be like well, I almost said Mr. Beast. L.A. Beast here. I wish he would be like L.A. Beast and just eat until he throws up. Yeah, we covered this like 4 or 5 months ago. Kevin already passed, unfortunately. So it has to be about 4.5 months ago. But yeah, believe it or not JPEG, when I saw the footage and somebody had sent me like a behind the scenes clip, I was like, bye-bye, Ryback. That's it, Ryback. Sit in your car and eat a Big Mac all you want. Oh, look, it's the flame. It's the hot and spicy Big Mac. That's it, Ryback. That's it. Braun Strowman just fucking killed your gimmick, man. Killed your gimmick. Rocky Red wants to... Oh, thank you for the 2-spot, Rocky. My favorite moments of wrestlers on game shows? Well, the Family Feud ones are always fun. Especially when they do the speed round. I watched Bianca Belair. Did Jade Cargill do the speed round also? And they failed miserably. I think Big B, I know Bianca did. I enjoyed when WCW did Family Feud. For me, my favorite one of all time is when WWF went on The Weakest Link. Stephanie came off stupid I don't remember if Triple H was on it. I think, yeah, he was on it. Booker T, unfortunately. Booker T. If any of you out there never ever saw WWF on the Weakest Link, it inspired me. If anybody goes back to my hotline days, you'll remember this. I have remnants of it still. Back when I was doing my wrestling hotline, I feuded with a lot of different wrestling hotlines out there. I became the biggest wrestling hotline in the nation, for real. And I made fun of all the other wrestling hotlines. And when I saw the WWF show up on the Weakest Link and how bad they were, I decided to come up with the Weakest Mark. And I did this special called The Weakest Mark. And I played clips of all the hotlines that I was competing with at the time. You had this girl, Jamie, that honestly, man, I wouldn't fuck her with your penis. And she was hot. She was just like a goof and brain dead. I remember one time she said, you know, we're going to do a wrestling tournament tonight, and the first round will be Vader versus Vader. I kid you not. Then you had Captain Lenny. You had the choke slam. We made fun of them all. The Weakest Mark. You are the Weakest Mark. I still have some clips of it. I even have a clip. I swear to God. I have a clip. You hear me because I recorded it. Calling the other hotlines and leaving them a message saying, I would like for you to come on and let's debate. You know, it's kind of like, I mean, not trying to be funny. It's a shame, but you heard Van Jones had revealed that Charlie Kirk offered him the debate like the night before. I was calling all my rivals and saying, hey, you know, I'd love for you. Why don't you come on and show everyone why you're not the Weakest Mark? You know, I actually recorded me leaving the messages. I still have the audio, for real. Still have the audio. One thing about me, as far as hoarding goes, anything that I recorded, I never threw away. So I have clips from 1998, 1999, 2000. I have some weird fucking shit. I know some of you have heard some of the Lenny stuff. Voicemails, kept them all. Thank God those hard drives still works. Thank God they still work. Nobody came on, though. Nobody came on. I'm not on WWE's payroll, DJ Razor. There's some, I'm into TNA right now, enjoying it. I hope that WWE allows them to dominate on NXT a little bit. I'm very fascinated if Joe Hendry becomes a mole, which I don't think so. There's elements of AEW that I enjoy. You know, when we did predictions on Wednesday, there's several matches. You know, the only reason why I wasn't sure if I was going to watch All Out today and tomorrow, nighttime, is because it's fucking 5.5 hours. You know, I like to be able to sit back, absorb it, think about it. Look, we spent 30 minutes earlier talking about Wrestlepalooza. I didn't write one fucking thing down. I didn't write anything down. Although I give it a 6.5, it's easy enough to sit back as a wrestling fan and enjoy it, absorb it, think about it, talk about what you like, talk about what you didn't like, the things that stood out. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, reversal into a suplex, 360 off the top rope onto. If you want that detailed, go fucking watch it. I don't know if I want to watch 5.5 hours where I'm forced to now take notes because then I'll forget about this and then I'll forget about that and then I'll talk about this and oh, Beth Phoenix came back and blah, 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 blah. You know, it's fine. 5.5 hours, good. If people like that, to me, I want to sit down and enjoy something and not feel like there's too many people out there that are doing AEW All Out reviews and they don't even like the fucking product. They don't even like the fucking product. That's how greedy they are for ad revenue and money. I have to talk about. Why do you have to talk about it? If I had a music channel and I don't listen to country music, am I going to cover it? If somebody dies, yeah. If somebody goes off the rails, yeah. But I ain't going to cover fucking country music if I don't tune into it. If I'm a baseball channel, what am I going to talk about hockey? If I'm a Mets channel, am I going to talk about the Phillies? If they play the Mets, if they fuck the Mets. So who the fuck forces anybody to watch a certain brand? Nobody forces it. I don't want to do it and then have to force to take notes and then fucking cover it. Oh, you left this out. You forgot to bring up this. You forgot to bring up that. I want to enjoy it. I don't want to have to fucking do it as a job. But no, I'm a fan of multiple products out there. I watch some of the indie stuff that shows up on social media and they show clips. I was watching Cross and Deffy's promotion yesterday. By the way, I only have about 35 pages left in the book. Very, very good read so far. Definitely enjoying it. Cross, if you're watching this, I have to admit, I watch it mostly when I'm taking a shit. But usually when I take my dumps, they're usually drive-bys. I'm in and out of the bathroom in 45 seconds. Now I'm sitting in there 10, 20 minutes reading, you know? And what's nice about it is it's not like microscopic text. So you go through pages, no problem. It's a good book, man. Definitely a good book. All right, we got 10 minutes. Bobby Means, do I see Lola Vice beating JC Jane for the NXT Women's Championship? I'm starting to feel that that's where they're going to go. JC Jane has had a great run. I still wish Toxic Attraction would have been a bigger thing in the WWE on the main roster. She's worked extremely hard. My only problem is she loses the belt. Where do you go from here? If you bring it to the main roster, I fear she's going to get into Kiana James territory. I like Kiana James. She's better in the ring than I think people realize. She's also, incredibly beautiful. But you look at her main roster gimmick, and it's like assistant, associate. It's like, come on, man. I understand not everybody can be a certain role. I don't think Kiana James went to the WWE so she could fucking have a clipboard and wear miniskirts and fucking, be the lackey to someone else. I want to see her get a fucking, have a good career, singles career. You want to bring her in slowly because of the surgery and the injury, fine. But I kind of feel like you bring JC Jane to the main roster, then what? It gives me Indy Hartwell vibes. And if some people remember, there was a point where Indy Hartwell was my favorite female roster in NXT, female wrestler in NXT. And then that infamous hashtag give Indy a chance. And I'm like, no, I don't want her to go to the main roster. And people are like, why not? I'm like, because people are going to want to see Dexter Lumis and her double date with Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that on the main roster. She's going to get lost in the shuffle. And what happened? They tried a little bit. They gave him a quick tag team run. She got lost in the shuffle. And Indy Hartwell got let go. There's too many people for her to leapfrog. You bring JC Jane to the main roster. How the fuck is she going to leapfrog all those women? What is she going to do? Feud with Zelina Vega and Michin? Like Julia? With all due respect, look at Julia's title run so far. She's beaten B-Fab, Zelina Vega, and Michin. That's it. As far as I remember, that's it. Well, that's a great fucking run you got there on the man. It's not her fault. It's creative. But you bring JC Jane to the main roster, and then what? Then what? 316 MMA. When do I think that Liv Morgan will be back? I think Royal Rumble. Do I think she could win the Rumble, maybe face Roxanne Perez for the Women's Championship at Mania? I don't know if she's going to face Roxanne Perez. I think she will come back and either beat the balls off of Roxanne Perez and be out of Judgment Day immediately, or she comes back and she becomes a threat to Roxanne Perez in the Judgment Day, and there'll be some like dirty looks, when nobody's looking. Storyline, obviously. But no, I could see her coming back, winning the Royal Rumble, and challenging whoever. Remember, you win the Royal Rumble, you could challenge on SmackDown too. you could challenge on SmackDown also. So just because Liv Morgan comes back, she wins the Rumble, doesn't mean that she doesn't decide to go to SmackDown and face the champion, whoever the champion is at that time. Ronald says Triple H is a clown. You don't have to keep posting it, but listen, Triple H, all right, you don't have to keep doing it. Before I defend you, all right, this is your last shot. Before I defend you, I'd rather defend you than block you or mute you. So we give you one more chance. One more chance. Oh, it stopped. All right. Look, this is what I'll say about Triple H, for real. Okay? I'd rather have Triple H at the helm than Vince McMahon right now, because Vince McMahon was very complacent. And I've brought this up a few times before. Vince McMahon, as long as he had his billions and the stock was $60, $70 a share and he was getting laid, like, he was fine. All right, you run into kind of a lull with the tag team division. Oh, we'll have the Usos and the New Day face each other. You're like, Vince got too lazy. But when you're in your 70s and you have more money than you could ever imagine, and you're getting your knob wet and you're getting laid, and you have, and the company is stable and investors are content with what you're doing, that's fine. But once Endeavor bought WWE and TKO came along, I'd rather have Triple H, who is, yes, a McMahon guy for 30 years, but also someone who has been in the ring, who has done it, who actually has done a tremendous job in NXT, and be a better chance at being more in sync with fans than him being out of there, and TKO brings in non-wrestlers. WCW had standards and practices in 2000 and 2001 that WCW, Vince Russo, obviously, look, say what you want, his work in WCW was not very good. And a lot of it was because it didn't pass standards and practices. I'd rather have someone who is a wrestling person in charge as the head of creative and the chief content officer than them bringing in someone that they think could fill the role that is not a wrestling guy, who thinks that they have the pulse of it. And then they start pushing things because they think, oh, that's why I almost feel, like, remember when The Rock came back at Elimination Chamber? Remember the whole thing with Travis Scott and everything? Remember, that was Ari Emanuel that called Triple H and says, we need a little boost for Elimination Chamber. We want to bring back Rock. Now, we see how awful that was. And then he didn't show up at Mania. And then the excuse was, well, I felt they didn't need me at Mania. Ari Emanuel wanted him back for a fucking Elimination Chamber, but not the fucking biggest premium live event of all time, of the year. The biggest event, the most highest grossing event in their history. And you don't want The Rock back then, but Elimination Chamber, yes. That's an example of someone who is not a wrestling person, who makes a decision, thinks that, oh, this will spice it up. And we saw how awful that turned out. So that's why, although Triple H, to me, is much more flawed, I think it's who do you replace him with? You know what I mean? It's not as good of a selection as you think. We're forced to accept it, but there's enough noise online to keep them in check. That's why Triple H keeps going on Pat McAfee and says the shit that he says about people online. Because people do make enough of a noise that fans do pay attention. See what happened with Cross. That was all online. And it carried over into the arena. And next thing you know, everybody in the arena is chanting it as well. And he fucking shot that shit down. And unfortunately, it faded away because people realized they could keep chanting it and screaming it, and they're not going to change their mind right now. They're set until Mania. All right, we're going to wrap this up in a minute. Well, as far as when Benoit did what he did, my answer to you is my reaction. Listen to the podcast that we did, 5-hour podcast. We covered it in real time. We opened up that episode paying tribute right after Raw. Had no idea that he did what he did. Halfway through the show, live, we found out that he did it. By the end of the show, we were spitting on Benoit's grave, and he hadn't even been taken out of the morgue yet. It was a very surreal episode, and it's still online, that episode that we did. I recommend, if any of you out there have never tuned in, the audio was very primitive, because remember, at that time, we had DSL and T1 connections. We didn't have what we had now, so everybody was doing it through a telephone. The audio quality is primitive, but we're the only show, I think, that survived, that covered that in real time. We literally started the show paying tribute to Chris Benoit. I had to add a disclaimer at the beginning of that episode so people would understand that when we started the show, everybody thought that Chris Benoit was murdered. Halfway through, we found out the truth, and it was crazy. And we had people calling in. It's pretty wild to hear that episode. So, all right. We wrap it up with Douche. He's a tech nerd. I mentioned being a hoarder of my archives. You might be able to make them easy for me to search and help with history. I appreciate the help. I mean, I have everything on standby. I already have some things already transferred over. It's just that everything is just randomly titled. So I got to just go through content, to sift things out. But no, I have everything pretty much on standby. In 2026, not only are we going to branch out a little bit further on YouTube and, do more shows during a week because the history show will be finished, but I'm going to put up a whole bunch of DTKC on Patreon now. Every episode is available because we have a very small family there. So the bandwidth is not a killer for me. Everything costs money. But in 2026, I'm starting to figure out ways that we could get all the episodes up back online for everybody to enjoy. I will say this in closing. I want to just share something with you all. It's random. I'm just looking at it now, but I might as well share it because this might actually be an idea for you in the future. See the pictures behind me? Eddie Guerrero's head was always cut off on these shows. I'm sure you all realize that. They were never even. I didn't change anything with the cameras. What happened last week was I was asleep and I heard a big rumble in this room, and no one else would be in this room other than mice. And I walked in here at 3:00 in the morning, and everything behind me fell down. Terry Funk picture, some of the figures came falling down, they fell down and everything tipped over. So this right here, for those that don't know, this is material. It's covering furniture. That's what I've always had. So anyway, long story short, all the panels that I have on the wall have been glued with this. I glued the panels to the wall, and then I would use tape to tape the pictures to the wall, to the tiles. And the glue's starting to come off and everything's coming tumbling down. So I was trying to figure out what would be an easy solution and be a quicker, not even a cheaper way, but an easier solution, because I have shitloads of glue on that wall. Someone told me about these. Okay. They're on Amazon. I'm not seller of them, but when I tell you what this is, you're going to be like, holy shit, that's an awesome idea. But it's scary how powerful they are. Somebody told me to get magnets. And what you do is you have a magnet like this, and you put double-sided tape on it. And all you do is you take this little magnet and tape it to the wall. And then take another one of these magnets and put it behind the tile. I mean, these things are fucking powerful. I mean, if I literally, these things will break. But now all I have to do is put one of these and put this behind it, and they fucking stick perfectly. It's an awesome hack. Don't use fucking, those strips, command strips. Command strips suck. If I showed you right now, I could see about 40 command strips that are on my wall because all the tiles have come down. I got round magnets. Look at this. They're so goddamn strong. And it's even stuck to this. Look, I can't even pull this out. That's how hard it is. Look. I can't even drop. Look. That's how strong these are. One little one. And that's how they're all staying. So that's why I'll be rotating the pictures in the future. Because all I got to do is just pull it out like a magnet. So, but it is scary too. Because if you're not careful, you see what happens. These fucking magnets and my computer monitor, they'll fucking go right through the monitor. So, just a little hack. Some of you may think it's a great idea. Don't do command strips. And God, don't do glue. Biggest mistake I ever did. So, and those magnets do break. So be very careful when you get them because they do break. But they're tremendous, man. They're tremendous. You little adhesive, double-sided tape, 1, 2, 3. So next week, I'm sure we will see new pictures back there. But guys, I'm out of here. Much love to all of you out there. If you're live tomorrow night after Raw, I will be live in our Discord channel, dtkcdiscord.com. We will cover Raw. We'll get into wrestling news. We'll talk a little bit more about Wrestlepalooza. I'm going to watch some of All Out tonight. I may skip a couple of matches. I'm not sure, but I'm going to watch at least half of it tonight because right now it's only 10:10. So I'll be able to start watching around 11 until I doze off. And we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow as well. And don't forget, Raw starts an hour early again this week, 7 p.m. Eastern, which means Raw will go off the air around 9:30, 9:40 Eastern. So we'll be starting a little bit earlier than usual. But I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. And I'll catch you all on the shows later this week. So be well and have a good one, everyone. Ciao.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster. For me to live any other way was nuts. To me, those goody-good people who worked shitty jobs for bum paychecks and took the subway to work every day and worried about their bills were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If I wanted something, I just took it. I ran everything. I paid the bills. I paid the host. I even paid the masked maniac. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. We always called each other good fellas. You would always hear from somebody. You're gonna like Don Tony. He's all right. He's a good fella. He's one of us. But if you're part of my crew, nobody ever tells you they're gonna get rid of you. It doesn't happen that way. There weren't any arguments or curses like in the movies. See, your haters come with smiles. They come as your friends, the people who've claimed they care the most for your life. And now that's all over. And that's the best part. Today everything is different. There's lots of action. I don't have to wait around for everything like everyone else. Oh, I didn't get the vaccine? Fuck you, vaccine me. Oh, your delivery guy has COVID? Fuck you, feed me. Right after I moved here, I ordered egg noodles and ketchup, and I got spaghetti with meat sauce. I'm no longer an average nobody, while they get to live the rest of their lives like a bunch of schnooks.